Walmart employees, what's the worst thing you have seen inside your store? Somebody put bleach, ammonia and Drano in the fisher tanks. Another time somebody sprayed deer pee all over the toy section. I'm really glad I don't work there anymore. There's not a single animal on this planet that I have more pity for than Walmart fish. Always stashed away in the cold, dark, smelly corner of the store with nobody in it. Probably gonna be bought by some meth head for their poorly disciplined child and housed in a critter keeper with some gravel from their driveway in it, where it will die a week later because the kid stopped caring. Bless them. Had a customer in a motorized scooter, his personal one, not store provided, come up to me at the sporting goods desk and he asked me where the cans of compressed air are. I walk him over to some, and he thanks me, grabs a can off the shelf, and proceeded to start huffing it right in front of me. So I used to stock the crafts section on overnights. I'm kinda an awkward person, so no human contact was great for me. This old guy on a scooter insisted upon sitting in my aisle for like hours, just staring at the needles. Okay. Whatever. I stocked everything I could, but finally I needed him to move. And honestly, I was a little creeped out at this point. I mentioned it to my manager on the way to lunch. After lunch he was gone. Turns out he had died there like 5 hours ago. I worked at Walmart for all of my teenage years, and there was so much poop where it shouldn't be. That's the most disgusting. The worst would have been when some thieves attempted to run out the door, followed closely by loss prevention, turned around and sprayed them with mace, which then wafted into the store. A few seniors had to be taken to the hospital for respiratory issues. Everyone working in the store spent all day coughing as the mace lingered in the air, because heaven forbid they shut the store down and think of anyone else's health. I worked at Walmart about 20 years ago, being the manager of the photo lab before digital took over. So my department was right next to the electronics department. I'm chatting with the manager of the electronics department, and all of a sudden we hear a woman yell, "Here it comes." We then see a middle-aged woman frantically scuttling down the aisle, holding her shorts near the back. She ran to the restroom, leaving a trail of liquid chute behind her. It looked like when a dog is sick and you're trying to get them out the door before they make a mess all over your carpet and they keep stopping to shoot every few seconds. An employee went in with a pair of pants off the shelf to help out. She put them on and made a beeline toward the exit without paying for them, leaving her soiled shorts in the stall on the floor. It's kinda shooty to bring up because it's sad, and I'm not trying to make fun of the guy, but it's like 4 AM and this man dressed in a suit and fedora comes in. No face. I concluded some kind of cancer had ate away his face. All he had left was eyes and a massive cancerous hole. He just gurgled. We had to have him write down what he needed. It was sad, but god damn it, it scared the absolute shit out of me, and I never really forgot. Not an employee, but a very frequent Walmart shopper. All the Walmarts around me are pretty nice. Never seen anything nasty going on. But there was an incident once that still sticks with me to this day. When I was younger, my mom had to grab meds at Walmart in the middle of a storm. It wasn't a bad storm or anything, just very rainy with some thunder, but it was supposed to continue for several days, so of course the store was packed. So we were in line at the in-store pharmacy, and there was a man who was clearly mentally disabled, with a helper, in the front of the line. The man between us and them was this dude who in my young mind must have been a lawyer, did not fit the stereotypical Walmart look at all, wearing an expensive looking suit, perfectly gelled hair, literally carrying a briefcase. He looked annoyed that he was there at all. He intensely reminded me of Patrick Bateman, just an air of disinterest and arrogance, and was brushing his coat off every time anyone walked too close to him. Everything's fine, and the guy and his helper at the front of the line get their prescriptions and start to turn around. Just as they do, there's a huge thunderclap and suddenly, the power goes out in the store. It's not pitch black, but it's dark as hell, and immediately there's commotion in line. I look up just in time to witness disabled man punch lawyer dude square in the face. Lights flicker, come back on. Lawyer man is standing there holding his bloody nose looking like he's ready to murder someone. Disabled guy is freaking out. Helper is profusely apologizing and trying to help lawyer guy. Lawyer guy waves him off with a glare, walks to the front and calmly says his name plus info and throws down some money. Pharmacist hands him prescription, which he snatches wordlessly and turns away, brushing past me still holding his nose, leaving a trail of blood on the linoleum floor. I don't know why, but the entire thing felt so surreal I still remember it like it just happened. Wildest thing I've ever seen in Walmart. I've only been working at a Walmart for 2 weeks. I've had 3 people lose their temper on me. One woman slam her cart into someone else's cart because she couldn't buy alcohol with an expired ID. And one guy tried to walk away with a whole cart of groceries, in which a different customer walked after him and literally dragged him back inside. Again, 2 weeks. Edit. I'm getting asked this a lot, so I'll explain. Stores can't accept expired IDs because they're considered invalid. If invalid IDs were accepted, then it would create an aftermarket for those IDs, which would then make it easier for people under 21 to get a hold of something they could potentially use to illegally purchase alcohol. Watched a high schooler stoned out off his mind trip over his own feet and slam through a middle aisle display of those egg crate file holders. Those suckers went everywhere. Also an old woman tracking diarrhea through the store trying to find the bathroom cause she shoot herself. Worst ever. Some people signed up for an oil change, then threw one of those household butt bomb foggers into their car while they waited. When the technician went out to pull the car in, it was full of white smoke from the insecticide and the interior was covered in thousands of roaches all trying to escape the fog. We told them to leave. Worst this week, guy signs up for an oil change, and the technicians find 2 live cats in under the hood of the minivan. The owner came out to deal with it, saying they were his. Other than the people freaking out and throwing shit, and one junkie who continuously stole cans of compressed F for dusting computers to do whippets in the handicapped bathroom, how that didn't kill him, I still don't know. One story stands out. This elderly obese woman came in with her service dog, a little chihuahua or something, probably for anxiety. Gets one of the electric scooters, puts the dog with its leash into the basket. During the course of her shopping, the leash goes through the grate of the basket onto the floor and gets run over by the wheels of the scooter. The leash gets twisted up in the motor of the scooter. Eventually, the leash gets yanked tight and begins to strangle the dog. The dog uses what little air it has to panic, but quickly falls silent. The woman does nothing about this. Once she gets to the front of the store, she decides to check on the dog, strangled to death 6 inches in front of her. She flips shoot and screams at every employee she can find, telling them to do something. Save her dog. I guess she didn't know it was dead. It was their fault. Blah blah. The dog had been dead for almost 20 minutes before she decided to check on it. Piss and shoot all over the inside of the cart that she didn't manage to notice or smell for 20 freaking minutes. I no longer work at Walmart. I unfortunately have no idea whether she sued or not, or what really came of it afterwards. I've posted this in another Walmart thread. It's still one of my favorite stories from my mom. My mom worked at Walmart for about a year. She actually liked it as she was more active, but she decided to quit after the jewelry department manager had a meltdown and started throwing jewelry at customers. One old lady got pelted in the head with a heavy ring box, and it was over. Turns out the manager was selling the jewelry to friends and family, but would keep the boxes and stuff them with rocks and trash, so inventory would stay the same. She had the meltdown before she was caught. They had to drag her out of the store that day. Mine actually happened yesterday. I was walking back to my area and saw one of my co-workers in front of a puddle. She said, "Walk around." I responded, "I don't want to know." Her immediate response was, "It is urine." I lowered and shook my head and walked by. Let's see. I've seen people tripping balls. I've seen a guy walking on 10-foot stilts. A guy with his dung out. A lady pull her pants down to adjust her panties. A guy passed out from huffing an aerosol can. A chick passed out on the ground. Low blood sugar. A car catch on fire. An employee die in his car in a parking lot. Old and lots of fights. I'm sure there's more, but I can't remember. No, I personally didn't see some of these, but I'm friends with employees. There's nothing to do in this town, so when something happens, I hear the stories a few times. Editor: yes. A guy whipped out his deck and started peeing in front of my sister-in-law. Someone throwing their used children diaper on top of the freshly baked cookies I just put out, / had to throw out 700 cookies. I've been working at Walmart for 2.5 years and I've seen it all. The worst thing I've seen was a man who was checking out in the self-checkout. All was good until this smell whiffed by. I didn't think much of it and figured the guy had farted. He proceeded to shake his left leg until a large slimy turd came out his pants. He took his receipt and left. Needless to say, I did not pick that up and called maintenance over. I can only imagine the feeling of a warm turd sliding down my leg. My roommate worked at Walmart for years. The worst story she told me was when some lady confused the fitting rooms for a restroom and she took a big dump in one of the stalls. Right on the floor. At some point during the door, just after she realized what she'd done and tried to clean it up. But all she could find was a paper towel roll. Just the roll. No paper towels. So she stuck the roll in her pile of shoot like a flagpole and went about her day. I worked as a photo lab specialist for 2 years and saw some really awful pics. The worst was a toddler surrounded by marijuana buds and guns. We had to get the on-duty cop involved when the guy came back to pick them up. Edit for more info on why the cop was involved. I believe the guy was in the pic with the kid and had gang signs with one hand and almost putting a gun to the kid's head. It's been a while, so it's a bit fuzzy. I worked customer service at Walmart for a little bit, and one night, just as I was closing customer service down, a man came in screaming for help. He was wearing a white shirt, but it was drenched red in some areas. He said he was shot twice, and he thought he was gonna die. He lifted up his shirt to show us he wasn't just some druggie and really needed help. Lo and behold, there were 2 holes bleeding around this man's torso. Lucky for him, an off-duty paramedic was in line buying groceries and called it in fast for the ambulance. Just started a month ago, but I've already seen one shit-covered stall and the man attempting to take a bath in the bathroom to clean himself too. I heard a father say to his daughter, "I will slap the shoot out of you in this store and I don't care who sees." 3. And finally a bag of shoot. It wasn't a lot, so I'm gonna assume a kid's shoot hidden behind Legos. Not an employee, but I'm damn glad I wasn't for this one. One fateful afternoon, my bladder decided that it needed relief, so I ducked into the restroom. While I was in my local Walmart, the 2 urinals were out of order, which left the handicapped accessible stall and the regular stall. Someone was in the regular stall, so I opened the door to the handicapped stall and saw what I can only describe as the aftermath of a shoot explosion. There was chocolate pudding consistency shoot on the floor, the seat of the toilet, the wall behind the toilet, on the toilet paper dispenser, everywhere. It looked like someone had stood with their pants down, bent over and starting spinning, while letting forth like some sort of scatological lawn irrigation fountain. My bladder would have to wait. As I gently made my way out of the restroom, making a mental note to burn the shoes I was wearing that day, I saw a kindly looking older man in a yellow vest pushing a cleaning cart towards the entrance to that hellhole of vile human excrement and villainy. I'm not a religious man, but I offered up whatever good vibes I could muster for that man's surely soon to be crushed soul that day. Not an employee, but off-duty police officer. 2 homeless people dug out a hole into the paper towel section and were living in it. They finally found them when someone complained about 2 people having sex in the toilet paper aisle. Also had a homeless person take a homeless/alcoholic shoot in the bike aisle. Those employees do not get paid enough. It's been years now since I worked there, but this is something I will never forget. I worked in the photo lab, which was right next door to electronics. There was a man and a child, the child being maybe 8, looking at video games. I kept hearing the child say he had to go to the bathroom, but his father wouldn't take him or let him go alone. Long story short, the boy obviously couldn't hold it any longer and crapped his pants. The father then told the son to shake it out. The kid did just that, and tons of turds fell out of his shorts onto the floor. The smell was atrocious, and I honestly could not believe what I was witnessing. The father then walked over to my co-worker and said, "Yeah, you better clean this up," and promptly left. I was stunned. 2 really obnoxious racist assholes were walking around the store, obviously drunk or on drugs, casually calling any black person they saw the N-word. Not sure what ended up happening to them, but pretty sure they got kicked out by asset protection. My best friend / roomie worked Walmart and technically died there after having an aneurysm. The worst story was about the Hamburglar, a person / persons who would put a packaging of raw hamburger in their cart and then change their mind and leave the hamburger in some random spot. Sometimes it would be a couple of days before the Hamburglar's deed was uncovered. It was so bad that almost every employee started inspecting their area of responsibility, and pretty soon the Hamburglar's foul deed were being discovered very quickly because no one wanted to deal with a leaky maggot mess. Then the assistant manager got caught leaving a package of hamburger in the shoe department. At the time of this story I was an overpass manager. While I was walking my rounds I had an associate come up to me and tell me that a customer told he to get the frick away from me or I'll kill you beach, and that he was headed towards the hardware department. She gave me a quick description: headphones, hoodie, white guy. I radioed the overpass asset protection guy so he could locate him on camera and headed out to find him. I see someone matching his description facing the other was down an aisle in hardware, and I go to confront him. He turns around and has holding a fucking hatchet. I keep my distance and ask him to leave. It's then that I realize that he's talking to himself. His conversation with himself is very conspiratorial in nature. With my limited knowledge on the subject, I have always thought that he was acting like someone in the middle of a strong schizophrenic episode might, and he scares the crap out of me. I quietly radioed someone to call the cops and to let them know about the hatchet. They picked up a few things and headed to the registers while I followed him from 20 feet back. We opened a register just for him and things went smoothly from there. He left the hatches at the register, but I continued to follow him from there. As he got to the front door, a line of cops confronted him with assault rifles and shotguns out and ready. He complied and it ended as well as I could have hoped. Was working part-time at Walmart and was having a smoke break. There was a guy sitting on the bench with a paper sack. I thought, oh, he's got a beer in there or something to that nature. Nope. While several of us employees were sitting there, dude pulls out a white paint can, blasts it into the paper sack and starts huffing it till his eyes roll back and he slumps out. Everyone was kind of in shock, but then a few seconds later he pops up, grabbed his stuff, and went on his merry way. I personally didn't see this one, but I heard about it. It was during the holiday season, and there was an older woman who went into a dressing room with a bunch of clothing and came out with a lot less. She hobbled over to one of our electric carts and was slowly driving out, moaning in sheer agony. Needless to say, Softline employees noticed this and immediately alerted app. They stopped her at the door, found a bunch of stuff out of bags in the cart that weren't paid for, and when they took her into the app office, they found out that she had a lot more stuff on her person, lodged up her ass. Our app person, with the help of a couple of cops, had to strip this old woman down in the office and remove said items from her rectum. The woman was arrested, and I don't think I've ever seen our app woman leave after clocking out so fast that night. My two favorite oh shoot moments. 1. Coda Damascene kid wandering the store looking for a little boy and we see him flying down the main aisle on a bike. He clipped the edge of a rent display and went flying into a shelf and got banged up. 2. This is the worst one. Again, young kid, maybe 7-ish, laying on the bottom part of the cart. He was looking up through the cart and his head was at the front. Mom hit a bump, kid slid forward, head bent back, and went under the cart while he was still on it. That one was disturbing, but he didn't have any issues other than screaming for the first minute or two after. Oh, one more, much more mild. We're an academy store, which means we're the model store for the area. Managers come to train and see one best way in action, then go home and try to emulate it. Him trying to speedrun the pharmacy section with a co-worker, so we're cutting up while we're slinging freaked. Right beside us is the pharmacy line and a guy, vaguely nondescript, is chilling, second in line. I look over at him, and he suddenly starts gazing around like he's lost. I ask if he's okay. He responds, yeah, just thought I was in another dimension. I look at my co-worker, he shrugs and continues stalking. The guy isn't obviously injured or anything, so I continue stalking. The guy keeps on. Him from other store, Thee'll push you out the way. cuss at you. Even the cap workers will push you. This store's much nicer. Internally, I think, F can fire them, but aloud I say, I guess we're just nicer people. He straight up cackles and walks away from the line. Weird shoot, but at least it was a compliment. Not an employee, but I felt really bad for one. My brother was at Walmart with my friend and I. We were looking through pet stuff and there was an owl with plungers at the end. Being the 13-year-old he was, my brother could not resist the temptation of picking one up and sticking it to the floor. We laugh a little. After he does this, he goes to put it back and the whole rack falls down. He's frantically trying to place all the plungers back as my friend and I are running away and cackling. Then, an employee walks up and starts to help him. Apparently the whole shelf 3 racks of plungers was unstable, and as they were putting the last few on, the racks above clatter to the ground and now there are probably 50 plungers rolling around on the floor. My friend and I are freaking dying watching from the clothing section. The employee just puts his head down, sighs, and tells my brother he can just leave. We didn't get in trouble or kicked out, but I'm so sorry for that poor employee. It was funny as hell, though. Imrad Mike Mart stories. 1. Old guy pisses himself and then proceeds to sit on every piece of furniture and desk chair in the store. 2. A single guy repeatedly setting the women's underwear on fire over multiple weeks. 3. A guy turning yellow and passing out right in front of me. Walmart owned store in Europe. I saw a lot in my time there. Worst was a man who shoot his pants and needed me to fetch him supplies to clean up. I'm glad he felt able to ask for help, but it was so gross. The sheer amount of really dirty smelly people was an eye-opener too. My co-worker had the worst experience though. She refused sale of a knife to a man who was intoxicated. Her boss overrid her and sold him the knife. An hour later a different man ran into the store holding his stomach and bleeding, screaming for help. When he let go, his intestines fell out. The first drunk guy brought the knife and went back to the bar and slashed guy number 2's stomach open, and it was all in a row over a girl. I'm a former Walmart employee, but one time I came in at 7 o'clock a.m. as a customer host / asset protection associate, and at around 7:15 in the morning a woman comes in and goes directly to our restroom area, which was normal seeing as how we had some homeless people who would come in and just use the restrooms and leave afterward. However, for whatever reason asset protection decided to watch her, and they saw her just barely enter the corner for the women's restroom, stop, and proceed to inject herself from what they claimed looked like heroin. She then proceeded to leave the needle and try to shoplift a hat, to which asset protection then had me stop her and ask her for the hat. Considering that this was above my pay grade and the asset protection guy, we both just decided to call in the janitor to get rid of the needle and pretend like nothing happened. Despite the fact that after I took the hat back, she then proceeded outside where she started to yell like a lunatic and started arguing with somebody, even though there was nobody there. Probably should have called the cops, but not my call.